Thank
Thank
you.
you. Hey, welcome.
Beautiful. All right. So today we continue with the Legacy series, 54th anniversary of the ministry, and we're interviewing each of our members, current and past. And today you get me. So B, take it away.
Yay.
Thank you for being
Niki,
the
are
interviewer.
are we recording?
I
Yes.
believe so. Yes. Thank you.
All right, Nikki, I'm excited. Thanks for being willing to be interviewed. I have to say again, Carrie is a much better interviewer than I, but I will do
We
my
were talking
best.
about you, Carrie, in case your ears were
Yeah,
burning yesterday.
No worries, it's just practice.
Yep.
you're so good. It's yeah, inspirational.
Yes.
So, all right. So, it's been really great kind of getting to know you a little bit more since I came back to Madonna. And it's nice to be able to interview you today too. So that's
Thank
really
you.
great. Um, so when did you start with the Madonna ministry community, Nikki?
I met them for the first time in 2008. We were in Sedona and they had their conferences at our facility. And I had just started working there. So you were my first conference. And it was like, okay, well, that kind of flipped the switch for me. And I've been in ever since.
Okay. Um, what was it about it that flipped the switch for you? I'm curious.
Well, it was just really interesting that such a diverse group of people, and they weren't completely diverse, but they were very diverse in personality and style and what they were focused on in their own ministries, because each of us has our own ministry in addition to what the collective does together. And so I was intrigued by that because I came from, a background in Lutheran, and it was just very dodgy and dogmatic and all the requirements and the rules and the standing to sing and the sitting to listen. And it's like I actually became a teacher, a Sunday school teacher, to get out of doing services. So we had fun with the kids, teaching them the little stories and singing songs in a much more fun way than the organized religion. So I kind of walked away from organized religion. So this was interesting because it was new and different, and the people were just so loving, and you could tell everybody had a connection. And so I found some very, very wonderful friends that have been ever since, there for me in my time in need and vice versa. So being able to give and take at the same time.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Um, so over the years, what have you done as a volunteer for the Madonna ministry community since then?
It varied because we had some very good people in place doing what I do now. So that was taking care of the website and the newsletter and things like that. But in the initial phases, I guess I was more on the marketing and promotion side, doing social media posts and bringing people to the table. So in my role at Sedona, I was able to get a lot of people who were in an energy field, sort of energy work way of life, more interested. And so we brought several people to the table. I think we ordained in the early days, we were ordaining anywhere from 30 to 40 people at a time. And I think we brought at least a dozen from Sedona by ourselves. And then we had a Native American church branch too that also had some members that came in and did dual memberships with both Madonna and the Native American church. So it was a real interesting time because people were just really seeking at the time and looking for something that was new and more pure and getting back to basics of the laws of nature and Native American ways and things like that. So it was really interesting.
So the Native American Church branch wasn't a branch of this Madonna ministry, but it was a branch.
No, it
Okay.
became like a sister branch. And so two or three of us from the
Interesting.
Sedona clan went ahead and had a branch of the Oklahoma Native American Church put in our names. And so we started our own ministries under that. But that was a subset of the Madonna ministry membership too. So it's like any one of us in this room has our own thing that we do in real life, day to day, week to week. But then we collectively come back and do this Madonna ministry leg of our spirituality. And so as a collective, we had two or three different denominations, if you would, or different ways of following the path. And so the Native American church side of it was more based on the plant medicine and doing like native ceremonies and sweat lodges and things like that. And so we befriended, Bear Cloud was a very good friend of ours, and he was an artist that was local to Sedona, and he would paint spiritual images into his painting. So he would do landscapes of the Sedona and other environments, but he would put buffalo and all kinds of sacred animals and like eagles and hawks and things like that into his paintings. And so it just became another way of expressing nature's laws and the fact that we're all one and all of the same essence energetically.
Beautiful. Thank you. Um, so your own personal ministry, like what does that look like for you over the years? What have you done with it?
I was kind of the unministry. Like I say, I objected to organized religion from a very early age, like age 10. I could see the hypocrisy of just showing up once a week to get forgiveness for what you did all week. And it's like, that just doesn't make sense. It didn't resonate with me. And so, as I was raised in the church, my parents had very good friends in the church, and those friends remained until their deaths, and they still even acknowledge us and reach out to us. So it was also a good spiritual family, but some of the goings on just didn't quite fit for me, and so I kept seeking. And so when I went to college, I studied world religion, and so I learned about Sufism and Sunnis and all of these other aspects of belief and a higher being or a higher purpose in life. And so I was still curious, but I didn't really tie into anything specifically at that age. But as I was going through my corporate years and getting sucked into the healthcare system and pharmaceuticals and, science making people sick and addicted and all this stuff, it's like, okay, that's what attracted me to the Native American church, because the Native Americans that blessed me basically had done this prison habilitation focus. So they would do sweat lodges for the prisoners, and they would do transformations and purifications and getting people to talk through all of their traumas and dramas. And the recidivism was like improved by 80% from what they were doing. But because in that case, this is like the pharmaceutical companies to the healthcare system, it's like, wait a minute, the prison system was a for-profit entity, and they saw all of the positive things that this Native American church was doing for their inmates, and they decided to cut the program. They said, it's working too hard. We need to have people in these seats. We need butts in seats to make us profitable. And so they stopped doing the healings. And I couldn't believe it. But these are the kinds of things that make me say it's an unministry, because I don't do the traditional by the book stuff. I kind of look for the alternative. It's like a river, flowing around and up and under and over top of boulders to get by, because we just need to find another way to get back to the laws of nature and the way that energetically we're meant to be in this world in a synchronistic way.
Beautifully put. I love that.
Thank you.
So I'm sure your ministry work has kind of evolved over the years. And like,
Yeah.
could you share like a few of those steps of evolution and like
Yeah.
what shifted and when and why?
Yeah. When I was in corporate, I was on the East Coast of the US, and doing a lot of work in the biotech field and, working on genetics and the DNA stuff. And it was like really early days. So I was reading all of the books that I could about genetic engineering and all the possibilities. And it's like, some of it was scary, but some of it was so intriguing. But I ran into a variety of lifestyles and people who kind of saw a different way of moving the path forward. And I was introduced to Tantra at the time. And I had a teacher, Lori Handlers, who was from New York, but she was in Washington, D.C. while I was. And so I was seeking, I was just looking for something, something a little different, something that wasn't necessarily considered a religion, but something that was about energy and healing. And so she took me through some early classes of breath work and, working with just moving energy through your body, doing emotional release and dealing with traumas of the past and just sort of getting through the gnarly, you know, confusion of growing up in a world that had so many rules and it was hierarchical and patriarchal and all the things that we keep objecting to, even today, decades later. And I'm thinking there's got to be a break in this. And I think the veil is thinning, but that's a forward story from that. But Tantra was kind of my first foray into being back into a spiritual path. And from that, when I came to the East or to the West Coast, I sought out different Tantra teachers and I wanted a female. And so I looked for, people in LA, people in San Diego. None of them had openings or they weren't quite ready to take on an accolade or a person who was just wanting to be I don't know, an apprentice or whatever. And so I found my way to Sedona and it was led by a male, but he was a very balanced masculine, feminine kind of male. And so I liked that about it. And so I thought, okay, I can do this. And so we went down the path of, I think I was there for 5.5 years and ran into all kinds. I facilitated all kinds of gurus coming through, people who are teaching and having their own special way of teaching energy healings, hands on, hands off, a little bit of everything. And then the Native American piece came in during that time. And so it was really interesting to sort of take advantage of all of these experts coming through my path and me facilitating their people. And so I was able to take all kinds of classes and learn all kinds of things and be fulfilled in a way that I hadn't been previous. So that was a real interesting time running a retreat center where lots of different paths come my way.
It sounds like it, like
Yeah.
meeting all sorts of fascinating people.
Yeah.
Yeah. How has being part of the Madonna ministry community changed or impacted your life over the years that you've been involved?
Well, it's been, like I said, when I first met them, it was like this cozy network of people who just adore each other. And so I felt really comfortable. And in my path, I've been the rebel of my family, and I've kind of broke away from the tradition of, family, 2 cars, 2 kids, picket fence, the whole 9 yards. And so I came out to the West, and my brother was here, but he was also one of those, pioneers of doing something else. And so a couple of our brothers stayed back east. They're doing the traditional thing and they're still in their element. But I felt like I was kind of on my own. And so started down a different path. I had, 2 kids by 2 different men. I didn't stay married. And so it was like I was a single parent for the most part, but in relationships, we had healthy relationships, father figures to the kids, that sort of thing. But it was all different. It wasn't the traditional of anything. And so with Madonna Ministry, I found people who accepted me for who I was or wasn't. And so that was the important thing is that no matter what I believed in, they were open arms, open arms, open heart, open
Mhm.
minds. And I believe in that. And so it really resonated with me. And through the years that I've been with the ministry, I've literally, I've had a place to stay a couple of times. I've had somebody come and stay with me when I had a surgery. I've had, people who, I don't know, they bought me a meal or, anytime that I was in need, there was always somebody there for me. And I've been able to return that favor and do the same for others. And so to me, that's just that quid pro quo where you're just in it and
Mhm.
you just believe that, it's okay. And with this whole idea of the 29 poems, which might be on our future question, I'm fascinated by building community and having people be able to come and go freely and just be in their element and bring their gifts and do what they want and when they want and have it be synergistic in the way that we coexist and in an honorable way to the nature as well as to the humans that come in and out.
Beautiful. Um, so with that experience, like I know you said earlier in this that you had kind of an ministry. So like, a little bit more about that. Like what does being a minister mean to you? Like just that title, or you know, is it like a reinterpretation for you or like
Yeah, it's more of a rebellion against the dogma of those titles because I've been a minister and I've been a priestess and I've been a bishop. And it's like the titles don't really mean as much to me as the sense of who I am and the way that I be. So a way of being and showing up in the world with or without a title. Not everybody knows that I'm a bishop. And so it's like, that's okay. I don't need that title. All I want is for people to know that I am who I say I am and I am who I show up to be. And my loyalty and my ability to kind of see a bigger picture and hold space for people to either come into that picture and play a role or for me to meet them where they are and give them a taste or a little sampling, of what it could be to have, something more in your life. Because a lot of people are in, pretty bad place and they're kind of miserable and not happy. And I tend to be a pretty positive person, glasses half full as much as I can. And I like being around people who call me out when I don't. So it's like if I start whining, I want somebody to slap me across the hand, not the face, the hand, and say, look, shake it up, get your grounding on, girl, and get back to center. And so I try to be that grounding cord for others. And so that's kind of how my ministry has unfolded is I show up in different business roles and project roles and friendship circles. And I'm just that person that kind of honors people for who they are and what they're good at. And I don't focus on what they're not. Because to me, when I was in corporate and I had staff, I could hire people to do those things that were missing. I could have people work in their excellence and they're happy. And then I could fill in the blanks with other people that love to do those things that weren't being done. So that to me is the beauty of building community and being with people who are synergistic and compatible and kind of like-minded in the way that they want to coexist.
Nice. We've talked a lot about your ministry and connection to it, but outside of your ministry in the Madonna community, like what's your background in the world? We'd love to know
I
a little bit
studied,
about that.
yeah, I mean, I wanted to be an artist and I kind of became a dancer in my teens, but I was convinced by others that that was no way to make a living. And I felt like making a living was how it was going to have to be because I wasn't the traditional, I'll find a husband to support me. And so I was a business person. I was in business at age 10. I had my first jobs. I mowed lawns and I babysat. And so, by the time I was graduating from high school, I had purchased my own car. I had my own stereo system. I had, all these things. And my parents were proud of me, but they never expected such a thing. So it was like I was kind of the pioneer. And so I was looking for, different ways of expressing myself. And so I started out as a dancer and I took tours to Hawaii. I took people to Hawaii and showed them around as though I was an expert. I was a tour guide and I had never been there before. So I ended up going 4 times and taking people. I fell in love with the islands. And so I started Polynesian dancing. And so I had this long red hair. And so I danced as Pele, the goddess of fire. So I went and I took lessons in Hawaii and then I brought it back to where I was living and did different performances around. And I was the haole, which is a white person in the Hawaiian field with the long red hair who had all the garbs because they taught me how to make the costumes and all that stuff. So I started dancing. But then when it came time to be more serious, I had met my husband to be, and he was going to study to be a doctor. So he says, okay, you have to do something more serious. I said, okay, I want to be a helicopter paramedic. He said, no, 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 you have to do something more serious than that. It's like, what's more serious than saving lives? And so I ended up studying science and I went into the lab. And so I was a lab rat for a while. So after graduation, I went into the lab and started doing different work on DNA and infectious diseases and things like that. But I honestly, I saw right away that, research science was going to bore me to tears because you have to repeat your experiments 14 times before you can say it's a success. And it's like, that's just boring. I'm here, I'm pipetting these things, and it's like, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I got that result. I already got that result. I already got that result. Oops, there's a mistake. I have to go back and start over. So to me, that wasn't for me. And so I had a company that entertained me being I called it a spy. They had me test other people's equipment. So competitors' equipment, I was testing in my lab. And so it's like they gave me a stipend to go test things under my, my science hat, but I became this investigative, project or product person. Product management is what they hired me into. So they plucked me out of the lab after a couple of years of that and put me into marketing and sales and product development and manufacturing and all that stuff. So medical devices and all the stuff that went with them. And so I did that for a few years and I thought, I don't like working for these pharmaceutical companies that are keeping people sick. So I want to do something else. So I just picked up and I left. I was a consultant for a while and that happened, that was okay for a while. But then I said, I don't want to support this industry that keeps people sick. It's not healthcare, it's sick care. And so I objected. So I left and I got recruited into it was a multimedia organization. So it was the newspaper industry. So back in the day when newspapers were the thing, it was like, trying to convince them to go online was a big deal. And so I was at the hub of making that happen. And so I was running an in-house ad agency and teaching newspapers how to be in an online existence. Otherwise, they were going to go out of business. And the industry did crash, but at least those that knew better were able to, survive and thrive and pivot and get into multimedia. So I was in the early days of producing DVDs and videos and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of interesting. But then even after that, I thought, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. And that spiritual tickle was still there. And it's like, I want to go explore more things. I had already started the Tantra path and I said, I want something else. So that's when I moved to the West Coast and I decided to go into the retreat centers and healing and energy work and seeing where that led. And so that actually brought me back to technology when I started seeing that metaphysics and science are now saying, oh, these are complementary and these are proving that each other is true. And so I came from science who said, woo woo is no good and that's not for me, to now it's like quantum physics and the quantum field is accurate in the fact that we are all part of this same existence based from the same cellular structure construct. And, we can actually manipulate with our minds, with our energetic field, or with healing. We can manipulate health states and survival and getting through trauma and all that stuff. So that kind of fit for me at that point. So now to make a living, I'm still working in, some corporate roles doing sustainability work, but I'm also thriving and trying to bring people back to the concept of nature has the answers. And if you just look to that, the industrial revolutions were awesome and they brought us to certain places, but it's like human sacrificing the world and exploiting our natural resources. And so now the planet is in trouble and the climate change is becoming an issue. And so now I'm starting to advocate for that and talk to people about let's take it back a notch and go back to what nature's lessons can be for us and start in that direction. So that's where the ministry comes full circle. And Bobby and Charlie have graciously donated 5 acres outside of Joshua Tree in California for us. And that's like a blank slate. We can paint our picture. We can decide what to do with that. It can be a sustainable agricultural field. It can be wind and solar power. It can be anything we want it to be. It can be water catchment for the desert. It can be reforesting or rewilding deserts to become something that's even more productive than what they've become. So those are aspirations that turn me on. That was a long answer.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's what we want to know. It's long and winding path. I love
Yeah.
it. Um, so you've shared a lot about your background. I'm just curious if there's other like movements or philosophies that have influenced your spirituality. And I think you were just touching on a few of those, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by everything, and so I want to do more than one thing all the time. Definitely a multitasker. So I definitely believe in the human spirit, and I believe in energy. I mean, to me, energy is at the crux of everything that exists, And I'm intrigued by mediumship and near-death experiences. I've been doing a lot more work this year, just getting more in touch with that because I had some psychic friends a while back and I did a little dabble in that. It was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. but I didn't do anything with it for myself. And so it's like, okay, I kind of believe in that stuff, but I don't really know what to do or how to do it. So I took a couple of classes. I took a shamanic class on guided energy medicine. And then I took some classes with a medium, and I'm just exploring. And so at the moment, with the veil thinning, we're kind of going into a new age of Aquarius. Pisces is closing out and Aquarius is opening, and there are all kinds of opportunities. And I'm starting to see the magic in some of this energy work. And so it's like, I probably would have been very skeptical about being able to manifest something from nothing, but I've witnessed people who have done it, and it's like, whoa, that's really special. And so I want to dabble some more in that and see what magic, uh, I guess, surprises are around the corner. And so I'm just open to what's next. And even with, humanity moving in the direction that it is. I mean, we just had a green economy conference, as a matter of fact. And the people in the room, we did these swarms, which are these brainstorming sessions where people literally got to have a voice in what they wanted their future to be in terms of solving for some of these problems. And so, renewable energy or food or agriculture or poverty or empowerment of women, any of these things were topics. And so people were going around the room. The round robins were excellent. And I started getting inspired just by the fact that so many people were passionate about saying something's got to change. And so they're stirring the pot and they're putting ideas down on paper. And so we've got another Green Economy Conference in May that we're going to say, okay, we're going to take what we did today here in November, and we're going to make like steady progress toward an outcome. It doesn't have to look like anything specific, but just make some progress so that we are not just talking heads, because this was the fourth year this conference was there. And before it was just talk, 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 talk. Next year, oh, well, we didn't do anything, but we're still interested. It's like, no, this is the time to start to do something. So we're actually taking action. So that's my role, is to try to get people inspired to take action so they can have a result come May and say, this all started, with that little flicker of an idea back in November.
Nice, nice. I like that. You talking about the future with the swarms and stuff. So, like, on that topic of the future, like, what do you see as your future spiritual path?
I think it's being an inspiration to others just by walking the path and being who I am, um, inspiring others to be at their best and fueling the collective to be greater than they are. Because to me, it takes a village, and I can't do anything like this for myself by myself. And when I was in the room, it's like I wasn't the expert in the room. And it was like I was a little nervous because I was in charge of renewable energy. It's like I don't know anything about that stuff. I don't really know the technical detail, and I don't know how to politically get around the conversations. But people in the room did, and I was able to facilitate that. And so all I needed to do is say, click on, you'd say your piece, you say your piece, and oh, I see a connection there. And sometimes that's what my role can be, is, oh, I know these people. And it's like, oh, I know somebody in the other room that's talking about this, and they should come and give you 5 minutes of what they're up to. So that's kind of what I am as a facilitator.
I would call that a weaver too.
A weaver. Okay.
I felt like that with you a lot. Like
Okay.
you're someone who is there to kind of weave the paths together and
Yeah.
make the connections. And I appreciate that about you.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I've asked you a bunch of questions, but I would love to open it up for other people to be able to ask you some questions as well.
Sure.
Anyone else have a burning question for Niki?
Yeah, I kind of see an interesting parallel here in your journey. And when you talk about the desert or the 5 acres, to me, it's like having a blank slate.
Yeah.
So it requires planting the seed, nourishing it, and bring it into fruition, whatever it is. And for me, that's how kind of life works.
Yeah, and that's a seed that might be a physical seed that grows into an actual plant, or it could be a seed of an idea of heart space. The brain-heart coherence is so important right now. And to just plant the seeds of the ideas that we can do something together, no matter what it is. It doesn't just have to be from the desert or the physicality of the planet. It can be something else too, esoteric or metaphysical.
Yeah, so maybe like a visioning session would be appropriate.
Yeah, yeah, we could do that. This whole platform that we used in the swarms it's called Sci-Fi Hive. And it's scientific because we want to think about 20 years out. We want to think about what the future is without the human limitations. And it's the hive because beehives and the swarm mentality is where bees work collectively as a colony to do their magic. And it's like they make things, they consume things, they pollinate things, they literally, because of them being together and working as a team, can get so much more done. And so this Sci-Fi Hive platform is something that's an interesting thought. We could bring the ministry in on that platform and say, oh, let's aspire to produce this 29 palms into whatever it can be. And we literally can take 6 different paths and explore those storylines. And it is about writing a story. And it ends up being like a comic book. It's kind of like we brainstorm, we think about the future, we think about, what needs to happen, who's the hero in this journey, who's the, partnership, who are the teams, who are the other resources that we need, and then what's the script. And then from that script comes these visuals as a graphic novel. And so this graphic novel then says, these people can look at it and they go, oh my gosh, so much thought went into this. And this is a story I can wrap my head around. So like me saying renewable energy is something I don't think I would ever be able to add value to because I know about it, but I don't know how to do any of it. But to bring that back full circle and to say, I can write the story and then somebody else can come in and say, I've executed something like that, or I've got this thing I'm inventing, or I've got this thing that I want to fund, and you bring those resources together and it's like magic.
I like your metaphor about the worker bees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Part of that is very important is that there's a queen bee. Somebody's putting it all together.
Yep.
Somebody's making sure it happens.
That's right. We had queen bees in each of the topic areas that we were. So there was a queen bee kind of holding space for the entire topic. So food, poverty, empowerment, energy. We had a queen bee in each one of those. And then we had a beekeeper who was looking over all of it. He'd pop into the rooms and kind of move around and do all their different things. So yeah, we had all those titles.
Who were you?
I was a queen bee in the energy, but I was also facilitating the whole conference. So I was jumping around as well. I was a beekeeper as well. It was a challenge because we had people in person and online. That was a big deal. We learned a lot of things of what not to do next time.
Well,
Okay, I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Kevin.
Go right ahead, Caitlin.
Thank you, Kevin. So in my journey with spirituality, starting in the mid 90s, I'd say early to mid 90s, I noticed a common theme from back then through to today with today's teachers, spiritual teachers and modalities, that the theme is that since back then, the same statement has been made about how we are at an awakening. We are coming into an awakening, and all the muck of society is actually going to start to dissipate and go away. And we're coming into this new revolution or evolution of spirituality. And I'm a bit dismayed at the same exact terminology and phrases being used today that were being said then, but they were being said in present. And so it's not as though they were saying, oh, yes, over the next 20 years, we're going to see this evolution. And so I guess my question to you on that is, what is your take on where we are at as a society, as a whole, as far as, being awakened, and where are all the awakened people? Are we truly making a difference in the consciousness of society? Or do you think it's just not in our lifetime that we're actually going to make a significant conscious contribution?
That's an excellent question because I have the same question And I'm like you, Caitlin. I want things to be done and I want to get results now and I want things to happen and me to be part of it. I don't want to wait for my grandkids to have to experience it or to get to experience it, I should say. And yes, I would love for my grandkids to experience that fully. But if you think about back in the 50s and 60s, when the sexual revolution started to come to be and women's empowerment started to become an issue, everybody thought that they could handle that within a year, a decade. Everybody thought within a decade we'll be good. And this is part of what I wanted to ask Bobby about, Charlie, because I wanted Bobby's spin on being a speaker and a sort of a leader of women back in the day. So like in the 70s, when I was starting to come of age, I was still kind of in that conversation, but I felt like I was young. I was on the young side of the hippie movement. And so I felt like I was an advocate and I felt like I was stepping out from the norm, but I didn't really find a way to be in power because in the 80s and 90s, when I was in corporate America, I had to act like a man to get success in my career. So I literally had to be bold and I had to be forceful and I had to be decisive and I had to even get angry to get my way. And it's like, are you kidding me? This is not who I am. I mean, I came from a family of anger, so I knew how to do it. I had a father and three brothers, and, anger was the thing. And so I was like, all right, I can lose my temper and get my way. So I did it for a while, but I was disgusted by it. It's like, come on, there's a lot more to this than that, than we're putting out there. So then in the 2000s is when I started, well, I guess it was the 90s when I started the Tantra path. When I started thinking about, okay, the energetics and the emotional release was one of the bigger things I realized was something that I could do because I was a redhead. I had a temper, I had background. And so I had to get through that. And so for a decade or two, I literally had to work on that and raising my kids. I mean, my kids can tell you horror stories of me losing my temper over stuff. And I always felt bad about it. It's like, there's a better way, there's a better way. And so to your question, it's not happening fast enough. And the Industrial Revolution has kept humanity in this place of power and hierarchy, and politics show it too. And I believe that is finally breaking up. It's starting to crack. And I've been involved with these futurism circles for the last 15 years. And I start to see things coming and where they're saying too, it's like 20 different Gutenberg moments. If you think about the Gutenberg press changed a lot for a lot of people. There are massive transitions happening now in finance, in, agriculture, in all kinds of industries, banking, the fiat. I'm actually in a group of people about alternative means to fiat. Fiat is currency in whatever country you're in. Fiat is the sense of how we do value exchange. And it always boils down to something that's either gold backed or silver backed or has some kind of connection to money and the elite having control. And so this, not just patriarchy, it's the hierarchy of capitalism that is keeping people in poverty because capitalism works very well. It's working the way it was designed to work. And that is that there are an elite 1% that control almost all of it. And the rest of people, you require poverty. You require the down and out underserved people to make that system happen. And so we're literally looking into ways to move that needle and to shift away from that. And I think some of these organized communities and the hippie type communities went into the free love side of it, but they didn't really solve for the finance side of it. And the ecosystems are working. There are lots of ecosystems where people are in sustainable and regenerative cultures where the land is regenerating itself and the food is abundant and things like that. But we still haven't been able to cross that path into politics and money. And so those are the most uncomfortable conversations to have because that's where everybody fights back in the most fierce way. And so I'm literally seeing some openings. And if you just look at YouTube or any of the podcasts that are out, podcasts are kind of the thing now. It's a trending way to get communication out. And more of the people who are doing these spirituality type podcasts, and some of them from The Secret movie, Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza and those people are coming out with more and more scientific evidence that the truth is that we all as a collective can stand up and be in power and change these things and change these ways. So I'm seeing it coming through 4 or 5 decades of that as opening, the veil is thinning, it's getting better. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's taking way too long. And this most recent election, in one way, there's a way we can spin it so that we can make it work in our favor. But in another way, it was devastating because it's going to hold us back yet another round. And so you think about, how do you play the system as it exists? And this is what I like to dive into. And so I have a couple of groups that are looking into, how do we work around it? It's like the river going around the boulder, around, over, under, through. You just keep going and the river just keeps flowing, and there are ways to regenerate such things. And I'm trying to look to nature, and I have this whole Syntropic World organization down in Australia that is teaching people how to be in synergy with coexistence with like-minded people who can make a difference and who will stand up and who will speak back, say something. If the system keeps oppressing us and pushing us down, somebody's got to stand up. And like Greta Thunberg, oh my gosh, what an amazing voice. And we need more of her. And we need people who will not be so afraid. I mean, even in Sedona, we went through our own thing. We were raided. We had people that came after us, and we stood up to them. And some of the people folded and went away with, a nasty experience, but some of us stood strong. And it's like, you have to speak back and you have to push back. And even if it destroys you, I mean, one of the things that came out of the Green Economy Conference in my hive for energy, they talked about, we can have this super power energy thing that's going to do everything for everybody, abundant energy for all. But then the naysayers said, you're going to destroy the planet if you go down that path. And so the person that was the inventor came up with this, okay, I'm going to sacrifice my reputation, the fact that I know I can do this, and I'm going to destroy that power plant. I'm going to destroy it because it's not good for the planet. And we're going to find a way to do it by distributing the responsibility of bringing energy to the table and giving several people a chunk of the pie. So maybe 10% across 10 people, as opposed to one power that has all of it. And that's the whole idea behind capitalism, is there are just that elite 1% that manage and control and keep the rest of us small. And it's like, I just don't want to stand for that anymore. So that's how I feel like we can make a difference. And it may not happen in my lifetime, but it might. And I'm certainly going to hang around long enough. I'm into longevity and anti-aging and reversing aging. And so it's like, I plan to be here till I'm 100 or more. And I'm going to see it by, I almost swore, because I believe that it can happen. So that's kind of where I'm at. Did that answer your question? Not really, but sure was.
Yeah. It was introspective. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody
Well,
else?
the one thing I had noticed was your web address. What is Exo Angels?
EXO stands for Exponential Organizations, and that's one of these futurism kinds of places that I've been working for the last 4 years. And it's an ideology of pushing things beyond the norm to see what result you can get. So it's this idea of, instead of linear growth, where it's like 10% in a straight line across the board over several years, kind of as slow as the pace of equality has been. What we're talking about is the exponential curve. So if you think about different things like, from horse carriages to cars, from typewriters to calculators, from, computers to now the phone. The phone literally has more technology in it than we had to get to the moon back in the 60s. And so these are exponential curves. These are like doublings. I don't know. There's a Moore's law that, I don't know if anybody knows. Moore's law talks about, if you go through a series of 30 doublings, you can get from one, instead of 1 to 30, where you just double each time, you get from 1 to 1,000,000,000. That's how big that curve is. So it's like this curve that just goes up. And it's like at the knee of the curve, you just know that things are going to take off very quickly. And so that's where we think we are with some of these industries that are about to be changed. we think we've found the knee of the curve finally, and that means things are going to go fast, and they're going to go fast and furious like AI. AI has kind of taken off, and people have either loved it or hated it, but it's here to stay, and we just have to figure out how to deal with it and make it fit into, whatever life we can create for it to be in a good way, And so I forgot what the question was. I was talking about exponential curves. Yeah,
Well, that
exponential
was the
organizations.
question.
Yeah, and Exo Angels is
Yeah.
basically the group that I formed when we were teaching people about blockchain and cryptocurrency. So we were in this organization that had a community of several thousand people, and they said, "I need somebody to come in and teach people about what blockchain and crypto are." It's like, okay, I'll do it. It's like I didn't know what it was, and I don't know finance, but I'm going to learn it, and then I'm going to teach it. Learn one, do one, teach one. And so we figured out how to take this collective money. And if you think about Bitcoin, or if you think about any of these other meme coins, I think you might know about Shibu or Doge, anyway, or Bored Apes is an NFT that's kind of in that realm of that's a future I can't wrap my head around. But we kind of figured it out. And so we brought a token to the organization, and we tokenized the exchange of our services. And so we have a marketplace within this organization where we can do advisory calls, we can do work for each other, we can do social media posts for each other, we can write articles, we can do whatever we want amongst ourselves. And we exchange in this coin called an exo token. And so these tokens became other than fiat, alternate to fiat, which is kind of what I'm interested in. It's like I don't want it to be, connected to the dollar, because not all of us we're unequal in the way that we can earn money. And so it's like I'm tired of being at 73%. So I'm going to go and have this token, and I'm going to command, and I have the treasury, I have millions of these tokens, and I put them back into the community so that they could trade. This is exponential. This is Exponential Organizations in Action, which is the book that I just wrote. I should have brought it. Actually, I have it here. I could show it. Exponential Organizations in Action are just 12 different authors that did exponential work in their own companies that made success and now have use cases to show for it. And the tokens is my way of paying people to be in the book, paying people to have this success. We made a game. We had people engage in the community and taking advantage of these tokens and learning about it. So we had a leaderboard. It's like, okay, this person showed up and did 5 things that were exponential. And we defined them, and everybody was able to do them. And it was like a game. So I gave them 1,000 tokens every time they did something. 1,000 tokens for you, 1,000 tokens for you. And it just worked out. It was one of those things that was fun, and it was experimental, and it didn't matter if it was successful or not. We were just having a good time figuring out, is this a way that we can coexist? And is this a way that we can exchange value without having to worry about who's making the most money? And it worked to a degree.
Okay, Nikki, I have some observations. You talked about wanting to know about Bobby's pioneering journey.
Yeah.
Well, look how enthusiastic you are about the thing you're in. And you're willing to be a pioneer. And in that pioneership, you create not only diversity, but you create adversity. So you're part of the adversity of what's going on in the world.
True.
But you're enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
And, it kind of reminds me of what Jesus said about render to Caesar's the things that are Caesar's, and render to God the things that are God. So it's like, Caesar's about adversity and God's about harmony. So you found what's harmonic conversion within yourself to bring about the adversity and diversity that you're interested in.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It does. It does. No, that's fun. It's a fun way to look at it. So come join the party. Anybody else?
Well, I, for one, am very honored to know you.
Aw, thank you.
Pretty special person. Talk
Thank you.
about diversity. Your life has been one big diverse thing after another. That's
Well,
pretty
that's
cool.
true, and I have fun with it. To me, it keeps me enthused. If I went down the path of a 9 to 5, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, I just don't think I could do that. I just never had that in me. And it's like there's a spark, and I was raised in a very traditional family, and my family didn't aspire for anything beyond husband and kids. And it's like, I love my kids. I have 2 kids and I have a granddaughter, and I love them dearly. And we're all unique, very different lifestyles, but really special beings. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And if anyone, I know you said you were interested in near-death experiences, there's a once a month group on Google Meet. I can
Oh, I think you mentioned that before.
send you the link. I mean, the speakers are
Yeah,
really,
I'd love to listen in. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. I think it's the second Monday of every month, I believe. And the
Okay. Yeah,
I'll
it's
send.
interesting because we're talking about ministry here on the near-death experience thing. I was listening to one podcast, and there was this guy that was just a real energetic, I try everything kind of guy. I just experiment with everything. And he was listening to this guy talk about a near-death experience, and he goes, I want to try that. I want to do that. And it's like, oh, no, 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 no. And I'm thinking, what do we do as ministers? And what do we do to curb the enthusiasm for people wanting to get to that unconditional state of love and that beautiful way of not fearing death anymore, but not propose that people go out and try to do it on their own. We don't want that. So I've been pondering that one, and maybe you guys can throw in some thoughts. But to me, the alternative to that would be if somebody decided they wanted to try it because they wanted to experience that. It's like, well, go into mediumship first, or go into any kind of, connecting with source, plant medicine, maybe. I don't know. But I do not want that to advocate that people go and try to be, dead to experience such a thing. So there are limits, I guess, and boundaries. So we just need to be very careful about how enthusiastic we are, because we might inspire someone to do something really stupid. Or maybe send the angels to protect them, higher self, you got to alert your angels. This one's a live one, a firecracker.
There was a movie about that in the 90s. It was definitely a cautionary tale called
Yeah,
Flatliners.
Yeah,
Heck of a
that's what
movie,
I
but
was just thinking.
not a blueprint, but a heck of a movie.
right, right. Yeah. So I
I
guess
learned a
everything
lot
is,
from those speakers, and
oh,
it has helped
yes,
me working with hospice.
I'll
It's
bet.
helped me a lot. When
Yeah,
people ask me, where am I going and what's it going to be like, I can tell them what I've
right.
heard many different sources, that the basic message is always the same. It's that overwhelming feeling of unconditional love.
Yeah, yeah. I have somebody who's in 4th stage cancer right now, and she says, I didn't really want to reach out to the group. And she said, I didn't want all of the I'm sorries and all that kind of feeling stuff. And so I looked at her and I said, look, I'm understanding from my recent experience of studying other people going through this. And it's a beautiful thing. And there's really a really lovely transition that's in store for you. So if you choose to believe in that, then that might keep you going and get through all of the hesitation to tell people, because you deserve to have friends hold your hand through this. And she was very appreciative to that.
So, Nikki, have you considered doing a podcast? You've got a lot of revolutionary ideas, and people would love to hear what you have to say.
You should.
I have people that are pushing me to be like a speaker, and it's like, I don't really see myself as that single voice. I like the collective. I like being with groups of people, and I like and maybe the podcast could do something like that, bring all the experts to the table, and I'm just a facilitator. I don't know, the weaver. I like that.
Yeah.
You're an excellent facilitator,
Thank you.
and all the people that come to inquire are your community.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And it helps to get the voice out there, not just my voice, but the collective and, all the ideas and everybody's angle to their ideas, because it all has some value. Even if I don't understand it, somebody else will, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
Well,
All
thanks
right.
for sharing your wonderful journey.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And we're almost at the top of the hour, so I guess we
Yep.
should talk about what's going on next week.
Yes, we have Terry coming back next week, and I haven't asked her this yet. We should interview her, but she may have a teaching for us. We're moving from the pendulum work that she's been doing into something else. So I want to see what that is, because she's doing this whole remote viewing kind of thing, finding people that are missing. And I'm fascinated by that too. So
Me too. That's really cool.
yeah,
I
yeah,
would love to do that.
yeah. We want to have it all.
Do you, do you want to ask her if you can interview her next week?
I can ask and we'll see. I mean, she may or may not be ready for it. And,
Yeah.
she may, I don't know. She's got a long history with us. She might want either Charlie or Paula or one of the long lifers to be the interviewer, but I'd be happy to too. So I will ask the
Cool.
question. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let us know.
Good to see you, Dolly, in the background.
I
Miss you.
miss you too, Nikki.
And how's Bobby? How's Bobby doing?
She's doing better. She's doing better. And she's coming, she's getting out of bed now and joining us in the living room
Good.
and she's slowly getting back to normal. She still has pain, but
Yeah.
that's going to be another 6 weeks of pain.
Wow.
Good.
She's on her
Blessings and
way.
love to her. We're sending her all kinds of positive vibes. I was driving by, I had this conference in LA. So I was driving by San Clemente. I was holding my hands out and sending love to you, all of you.
Thank you.
Yes.
She felt it because
Good.
she's feeling a little better. Yeah.
Good.
She's got a smile on her face now.
Awesome.
So, Nikki, on your drive-by, if you had a self-driving Tesla, you could have held up both hands.
That's right. Maybe that'll be a goal. I'm all for all that kind of advanced stuff. I want flying cars. I want the automatic drivers. I don't want to have to buy another car. I don't want to have to keep driving. It's like I was just in traffic twice this week. It's like, no. I like COVID because we got to stay home and figure out how to do it without driving in traffic.
Really, driving on the highway is quite an experience these days.
Oh my. Oh, my hip, I have a pinched nerve in my hip because of my driver's foot, putting my foot on the gas kind of thing for hours and hours. It's like, that's not for people. We shouldn't have to do that.
One way to correct that, I used to drive a lot, is to put a tennis ball right under that spot.
Ah,
That worked to relieve the pain.
okay.
Hmm.
Interesting. All right. Take that under consideration if I drive again soon.
I have plenty of tennis balls.
Okay. I'll stop by. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Charlie and Dolly, tell Bobby that we send her a lot of love and quick healing and all of that from all of us, okay?
Certainly
Definitely.
will.
All right. Thank you all. Love and hugs.
Bye. Thank
you
you
all.
for the
Bye.
interview.
Thank you, B. Thank you, Nikki.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks.